opening up. Here we go. Woohoo! Ready to roll. There we go. Opening up a few minutes early because we can't wait to get started. Louise, hello, how are you?
All good, thanks. How are you, Desi?
Wonderful. Hey, Louise, who's your guest speaker next month?
It's the flying farmer from Nigeria, Femi Adekoya. So yeah, he's
Fantastic.
I'm looking forward to that. He's very much a key figure in the Nigerian agricultural application of drones. So yeah, it's going to be good.
Awesome. We'll make sure that we post that into our uh, uh, Facebook Perks page. Yeah.
Thanks, so.
Remind everybody about that. Look at Dave. Dave is here because you heard we're talking about AAM. Dave, isn't this the week of your event?
Next week, the
Next week.
Flight Fest, is that what the event you're talking about?
Yes, that is.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. Some
Awesome.
2,000 RC and drone pilots converging on Malvern, Ohio for Flight Fest in 2023.
Woo! We love it.
Yeah, it's all about kids and having a good time and teaching kids about RC and drones, and Pilot Institute will be there among others, and we'll be there in force. Three of the seven of us will be there.
Wow, what an amazing event. You take over the whole field practically, don't you?
It's a farm, yeah, and there are over 300 campers that are there that they've booked, and so they're into overflow. So it should be a very well attended event. We're excited.
I love it. Do you have a link that you could post in our chat for everybody?
I bet I do.
Oh, I had all good intentions of trying to be there, but apparently I have a fractured foot that said, no, you're staying.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So awesome.
I'm sorry. I hit the wrong button.
I know. Sheila's trying to make me be quiet, I think. So awesome. Well, thank you for putting that into our chat. Anybody else got anything great that they've got going on that they want to share with us? It's been a wonderful week. It's been actually here in sunny Southern California. It's not been so sunny. And the actually almost got rained out, drizzled out of a drone event yesterday. Oh, got a few more people still jumping in here.
I'll just say that the Canadian wildfires have let up. Some
wonderful,
brutal, just no fun. Yeah, the air has been.
And you're really up in that area. And so have you been able to do any flights or anything?
Oh yeah, but I warned them, the photos are going to be very hazy and there's nothing I can do. So
yeah,
out of luck. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad things are being. Hey, hi Sharon. We see you too. This is a wonderful day. Oh my gosh, I love this. I see Jeremiah. I cannot wait for commercial UAV coming up. I just had a conversation with somebody and I'm like, oh, you got to go. It's the best one. You got to go. So
love it.
Maybe she will be here also. I know you've got some great stuff lined up already for commercial UAV.
Yeah, our program just went live. What week is it? Last week, but we're already getting some really good response to that, and more to come. So really excited to see how that takes shape, and a lot to follow up with you, Desi, to outline some of what we have planned for you and what we can further showcase.
Oh, I'll look forward to the call. Awesome. So I know we kind of opened up a little bit early because it was so exciting to see everybody already jumping in here. I know so much is happening in this industry. We're going to let Parker in really quick, and it's neat to see the future. And I love when we talk about the future. And I was sharing offline with Bill Johnson, who is our guest speaker today, about this drone that you actually get to sit in it and fly it. And I'm like, sign me up. I am so ready. So knowing that AAM is our future, I thought Bill Johnson is so fabulous, so knowledgeable, and I was excited to have him as our guest speaker. So I'm going to go ahead and segue over to him. He's going to be sharing, and I love the title about watching a tree grow, right? Great title, Bill. So I'm going to go ahead and segue over, and Bill Johnson, I'm making you our spotlight for everyone, and I can't wait to hear more about AAM.
Okay, well, thanks a lot. It was interesting, I'm going to be talking a little bit about sort of the science fiction, if you will. Everybody thinks of it as, God, this is never going to happen. So, and when we were talking, Sheila, about the wildfires, there is a company called Flying Whales that is trying to make a huge dirigible style vehicle to lift cargo containers up, multiple cargo containers up, and take them out to ships offshore. But they're working in the logging industry in Canada. So imagine, if you would, could they put, fire retardant up in those? They could have gone out there with these huge vehicles and helped tremendously. Hopefully those are the type of things that we'll see in the future. And so we'll see whether or not that really comes to fruition. But meanwhile, I'll talk about watching a tree grow. So this I got from, I happen to have a little sapling maple that started about 2 years ago. I saw it just growing out, a tiny little thing, right? And all of a sudden this year, it's taller than me. It has leaves. It's blown around and trying to be bent over by the gusting winds that we have. But it reminded me that the development of any industry is kind of, particularly those that are highly regulated like aviation, it's going to be a test in patience. And it's going to be, we used to talk about watching paint dry or watching grass grow. I feel this one is much more appropriate, saying a tree growing, because it's branching out. It has a bunch of different ways. It needs roots, it needs water, and I'm going to be talking about all of that. And I hope you find it interesting. And please put any questions in the chat. I'm really excited to take any questions and bring up what you'd like to see or have me answer. So I'm going to quickly, this is kind of the bottom line up front, right? These are the big topics that I've seen. There's a ton of information out there that I could go through, but I'm not going to be able to touch on everything. I will at the end touch on some things that I felt like when I first built the presentation, I didn't quite get all the way into. So I'm going to try to go fairly quickly. It's focused on urban air mobility, which is, the air taxi style stuff. Though I do talk a little bit about regional air mobility. Regional air mobility has similar developments at the stage, but have less issues with things like certification and infrastructure and demonstrations. They don't need those things to prove their point because they look like regular airplanes. They're just electrified. And so I don't go into that as much. And they don't look a lot like drones. And I know this is Women in Drones, and I want to see that connection of where drones have established us and now are moving it forward into the future. So I'll cover these big drivers, and I'll start out with sort of what are the big things that people are looking for in AAM. And the biggest one is probably the Paris Air Show. Volocopter has signed up and has built and I'll talk about this in the infrastructure part, but they've built a little vertiport where they're going to fly people to and from. And when I say people, it's person. They have a single seat with a pilot vehicle that is going to take them back and forth on about a 15-mile to 20-mile journey down into the main site for the Olympics in 2024. It's a big deal because the Olympics have a huge eye on them, right? And so they have a great chance to shine, but they're also going to be probably called out, I think, for not having very much of a production, not real air taxi stuff. But it'll be a cool demonstration. And it's sort of like, if you remember back some of us are old enough to remember seeing the jetpack guy fly into the LA Olympics, and he sat down and everybody was going to have their own jetpacks. Well, not so fast, right? So that's kind of what this is going to look like. Much more interesting is the Osaka Expo, where there's going to be a bunch of different players. They've set up different air routes, so they're setting up that sort of infrastructure of air traffic control to allow people to show off their wares, so to speak. And that gives them another year. And you're seeing Joby and SkyDrive, which is a Japanese company. Volocopter will also be there. So there's a lot of different companies that are coming in to show it off, and it's a little bit more realistic, I would say. Then there's the LA Summer Olympics. So now you have a 4-year span of maturity, and LA has been saying over the past probably 5 years that they want to be, right on the cutting edge of all this. Well, they have a huge amount of issues that go along with having people worried about things falling on their heads, to just the distance of their metropolis, that type of thing. So this will be interesting to see how they institute it. I'm afraid that it could be kind of like the Tesla Loop that is in Las Vegas. It's kind of interesting idea, but it's just sort of a novelty. I think it may be a little bit, it was ahead of its time, the Tesla Loop was. Will this be ahead of its time for the LA Basin? However, it's still a great demonstration of what could happen in a big metropolis in the United States. So that's a big deal. I didn't put it on here, but Brisbane Olympics in 2032 already is talking about having UAMs there. And it's a big push for the Australian market, which is actually has a great drone market, as you know. And so bringing in UAM and AAM is a big deal to them as well. So financing, this is what I say is the water that makes the tree grow, right?
Bill,
You
can
gotta
I stop for 1 second? We already
Sure.
have comments popping up into our chat.
Okay.
So do you want to take a look at them now, or would you like to continue?
Sure. Why don't I let me see if I can get back to that. I have to find them, or you
I
can
can.
just
I can. So, Bill, I know big air shows are sales events for airframe manufacturers. Are these big shows also sales events, or more show and tell and evangelizing?
Yeah, I would say it's the latter. I would say it's going to be more of a demonstration of what the vehicle can do. It's not like the Paris Air Show or Farnborough or anything like that. When you're talking about the Olympics, there's something else going on, right? And you're a piece to that pie, but it's going to be, oh wow, this could actually be the wave of the future. And so that's what I see these demonstrations as.
All right. Well, we have one more question in there, if
Sure.
that's all right.
Oh yeah.
So curious, are helicopter pilots transitioning to being the pilots for Eagle VTOLs, or are fixed wing pilots interested in becoming pilots? What
Yeah.
question I was even gonna
So
ask.
I'll actually get to that in a moment. There is the FAA is looking at using a new or using the existing class called powered lift certification for piloting, and that actually they have a new review of that particular certification for pilots out, and it is this is one I think Desi you were thinking about posting on. It's a pretty interesting idea of how do you ensure that the pilots that are coming into this get the correct knowledge base and experience in particularly the transition phase when you go from hover to forward flight. That's a new piece. In a helicopter you do it, but you do it with collective and all that type of stuff. This you're actually changing the positioning of the rotors or the propulsors, and it's a new dynamic. And so they are looking at pilots and getting pilots, I think, is going to be an interesting challenge. And I talked to that in a little bit more. Good question, though.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll
I'll monitor the chat for you.
thanks. I just because of the way that I'm set up, I can't keep up with it right now.
Okay, no
Um,
problem.
the water to make it grow has started to trickle, as opposed to the flood that it was back in the in 2020, 2021 during the pandemic. For some reason, everybody wanted to put money in and work on getting their next $1 billion, what's the unicorn out there? And there's a bunch of SPACs. SPACs were the special way to start investments, sort of like VC funds, but you didn't have to have any history in what the company would do. So, but they've been tightened down a lot in the US at least. And in the last year, it's gone down from this, almost $10 billion worth of investment down to 2.2, with only one major SPAC, which was last year. Eve Air Mobility and Zanite came together in a SPAC called Eve Air Mobility, and that was a $500 million SPAC, and it's continuing on. There are still regular investments, Series A, Series B, that type, and those are trickling it in. I'll say most of the money that they got in the 2020 timeframe, 2021 timeframe, is now being used for actually developing and getting the certification of these aircraft, and that takes about $1 billion, is what has been suggested. When you need to build more than one airplane, because it goes from a prototype to a production model. The production model is what has to be shown to the FAA and EASA as to be certified, that type of stuff. So it takes a lot of money. Unfortunately, some of these companies got the money a little bit at a time at first and not enough. They got this $500 million. It's not $1 billion. How are they making that up? They're making up in contingency sales. They sell their products. Some people are actually buying 50 to 10 to 20 of these even before they're actually certified or produced. And so that money comes in and they use it for the development and for the certification. So that's one of the ways that they're doing it. Okay, the next part that has always been on everybody's mind and been talked about as the biggest challenge is the government and regulation. And I'll go in a little bit more heavy on the US side because that's what I'm most familiar with. I keep an eye on EASA. EASA actually took the lead early on with, kind of making it very specific, but also saying, you show me what you can do with this aircraft and I'll certify you. And so they've had that, but they have been dragging their feet a little bit on coming up with operational regulations on how to operate these things. And so recently they came out with a draft for UAM operations, and that was just this last year. And they are expected to actually publish that sometime this summer. But I'll go up to the top of the list there, because the FAA is really, their mantra is safety first, right? The only way you can get certified is if you're completely safe for the public. And so they need a lot of data. And so they've used the FAA, they've used the military with Agility Prime under the US Air Force to collect a lot of data over the past 5 years, I'll say. And that is finally coming to fruition. They now have some ideas, I'll call them ideas, and they're asking for comment and for the rest of the crowd to come in and start talking about what they see. So from outside the government, they've asked people to come in. The White House Summit last August was 2022. In fact, Women in Drones was there with Sharon Rossmark was invited. That then brought up there was a legislative action that put the Interagency Working Group for UAM, Advanced Air Mobility, back in the late 2022. It was actually instituted with 20 plus members of this Interagency Working Group in February, and they just recently put out an RFI through the FAA that is in for public comment, and it's for everything AAM. It's for comms, it's for the air traffic management, it's for how to certify the airplanes. It's anything you can imagine you can comment on. So that's a real chance for the public and for the industry to put their voice in there. The certification process itself, I talked about the pilot certification was already established under this powered lift category, and that generally required about 1,200 hours, and it was similar to getting an ATP. And it's for commercial pilots. That's really what it's focused on. But the actual certification of the aircraft was split, and they were going down a path where they had talked about using, and this is a big change. They were talking about using Part 23, which is a normal aircraft category, and then putting special circumstances for the various new things that these aircraft can do. In late last year, after the FAA administrator left and the acting administrator, Bill A. Nolan, came in, they changed and they said, nope, we're going to go to specific aircraft certification under Part 2117B, and it's going to be very much, and they're going to do something that was already sort of in precedence for powered lift aircraft. And that had been around since the mid-1990s. This is a huge change. There had been a lot of G1 certificates, which means that they had put a lot of effort into what is necessary to certify our aircraft. People like Archer and Joby had already gone down the path. They had to shift that over to say, so now what is this powered lift type model series type going to be? And it's going to be very specific to each aircraft. So it's not going to be a class anymore, not like Part 23, but it's going to be specific aircraft. And so that's moving forward. That marries up to that pilot certification that we were just talking about. So the pilot certification for powered lift has been out there for a lot of airplanes. So it allows for how to find people that understand the transition phase, et cetera. But now they're going to re-wicker that, I think, with the public comment, and that's in, as I say, it was just released for comment, their review, and so we should see something on that this summer. And I talked about the draft UAM. Anything, Desi, for me in the chat? Not yet. Okay, I'll keep going then.
All right. All right. Feel free to put questions. Like I said in the chat, this is our future. Great time to ask questions. And Bill is so knowledgeable.
Bill, I had a question in the chat. This is Dave Messina.
Sure, Dave.
Sorry, Dave, I missed it.
It's okay. Much of the testimony in Congress over the FAA Reauthorization Act of 2023 lamented the FAA's slow-moving about not only integration of UAS into the NAS, but also AAM. And so there was a fair amount of notables in the industry making these complaints. And so you sound a little more optimistic. And I was wondering, what prompts your optimism when, certainly my experience with the FAA is in the opposite direction.
Yeah, no, and I do hold some skepticism, but to your point, I was just at a conference called the Advanced Aviation Innovation Conference that was held, and there was a huge discussion about the FAA Reauthorization Act. And Senator Mark Warner was there, and he spoke to his bipartisan bill that he has introduced over the past couple of sessions that describe UAS integration and the drive to create an office for AAM specifically, or an assistant director in the FAA. All of those were heard, and just recently the FAA reauthorization bill went out of committee, which was a lot faster than they were saying at that when I heard them speak in May.
The House bill's been released and the Senate bill's been leaked, so we have 1,200 pages of homework. Yep.
Right, exactly. But if you look at it, there's a ton of real substantive language in there that talks to the AAM and UAS industry. And it's because of these pushes that you've heard from industry, from particular members of Congress, I think. So I believe that there's an upswell of importance, and it also brings up the point, and I didn't mention this, is that there's this feeling and this constant theme out there, both in industry and in government, that this is a national security issue for the United States. We have to keep the lead in the aviation sector the way that historically the United States has, and that's what they want to do. And they need both the financial underpinnings of the government for that, and they need action by the FAA now to keep that keep the momentum moving forward and keep the United States in this game, or in the front of this game, I should say. So that's what I felt I heard, and I think I'm seeing now action to that. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Okay.
I wish I shared your optimism.
Yeah, I know. I do tend to be that way, and probably because I'm immersed in it, I have a bias, and I recognize that, and I have to always temper myself with that. But I'm hopeful. Okay, so let me keep on
Hopeful as
with
well.
sure. The drone industry has always led the way in advanced air mobility. One of the things that I see that's going to be critical is the autonomy and releasing, particularly for the UAM, the economics for a 4-seat small air taxi are that you have to have everybody paying their way that's on that. You can't have a pilot that you're paying to fly that thing around and you're not getting any revenue from him. So the faster you can get rid of those, and you can go to autonomous operations or beyond visual line of sight, where you have a ground operators working many of these air taxis, that's the way to go. So the drone industry is leading that way, and they have pushed and are getting greater numbers of waivers. The FAA has not yet gone to sort of a class of waivers or a class of BVLOS certification. Instead, they actually need every operator to get a waiver. That's one of the things that Senator Warner, was lamenting. Why can't we just move forward? The FAA on their side, when they spoke recently, when I heard them, they have said we still need to be safe and we need to get more data on what's required for BVLOS. But they're getting that data with all these waivers. In 2022, they got 80 waivers, which was 66% of all waivers granted to date for BVLOS. So it's moving quickly. There were some big ones out there. Percepto got a nationwide BVLOS waiver for inspection of power lines, oil and gas. Matternet came out of Europe and is now in the US and was granted a Part 35 with Ameriflight for medical supply deliveries, BVLOS. Zipline is in North Carolina delivering cargo BVLOS. Skydio is in 7 states under Dominion Energy doing power line inspection. And Soaring Eagle Technologies is also doing power line inspection in Texas. So BVLOS is out there, it's being proven, and it's now a known quantity. And how they're doing it is really the data that the FAA is getting so that it can be incorporated across the board in both drone and manned flights. There's also a lot of larger payload OEMs in the drone space that I think will sort of garner the more of a assurance or confidence in large drone and large aircraft being autonomously driven or driven around the skies. And those are folks like Elroy Air and Dronamics out of Eastern Europe, Saberwing and Dufour and Mighty Fly. They're all moving forward right now. They're probably they're getting help through Agility Prime and through the military, but also in the commercial sector. They're on the cusp of becoming operational. Pika is interesting. Pika is down in South America and has been flying agricultural spraying drones that are fairly large for quite a while. And they've shifted now and have retrofitted their Pika aircraft to cargo capability. So we'll be seeing those, I think, pretty soon. So drone industry, as I say, is leading the way in a lot of ways. In the UAM, and Desi, you want to stop me for a moment? You have some comments?
I was just following along, and I can see, Joanna had said she agrees with we need to keep leading the way. That is such a key.
Yep.
that we need to be the leaders in the industry. And Dave had mentioned that he's a little frustrated with some of the things that he's going through, and rightly so. I can imagine your struggles, Dave. And I would like to see somewhat of a comparison of, the AAM industry is out there and paving a path, but so is everything that Dave is doing with the CBOs and the FRIAs and all that. And
Yeah.
it's all a foundation for aviation as a whole.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Bill, the FAA is not doing anything to help drone racing. If anything, they're thwarting drone racing right now. And
Yeah,
so
that's
the Administrator Dixon promised a rapid setup so that we would not have to have remote ID, still not in place. And so that's just one of the examples. Plus, they're denying every FRIA for drone racing locales. And so very, very frustrating. And this extends into STEM activities as well. So
no, and I'll bring
this
that
is
up, Dave.
a really negative, and I'm escalating it up to Jeffrey Vincent. So we're not
That's
staying
good.
quiet on this.
Good, yeah, because I see drone racing at all sports as a key to bringing the populace in and then getting energy for your STEM education. That's
Here,
I bring that up here.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Chris Thomas, head of Multi GP. Drone racing is the antidote to video games. I love the
Yeah,
phrase.
that's right.
We are
That's right.
behind
I
it.
like that.
Yeah. We are
Yeah.
behind this for STEM, absolutely. And
Yeah.
my apologies overall for being so negative.
No, that's all right. That gives you energy in some ways. Just don't make it negative energy. Keep it positive and keep moving it forward.
Very true, right?
Absolutely. Well said, Bill.
Awesome. So also, Sheila had asked about what country is leading the way at this point for eVTOLs.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say and it's hard to judge because of the way that China provides information, it looks like China is leading the way. It really does. You have EHang, you have Geely, you have a ton of what looks to be very, very mature technologies moving forward, and they are establishing operations and they're showing themselves around the world. However, you don't see any negatives, and that to me means that they're not really showing you all of the development cycle. And so I'm not sure that they are really in the lead. I think they're probably at about the same stage. They have a huge drone, as you know, DJI, right? The major manufacturer for drone is there in China. So they had a leg up with that style of manufacturing and base. And they have a government that will push, in a very methodical way. It's part of I believe it's part of their political Silk Road initiative, where they're trying to establish Chinese economies around the world. Again, I'm not trying to say one way or the other, but that's one of the things that they've said over 10 years that they wanted to do. And so this may be part of that. And they're trying to be very supportive of it by giving funds, helping with the educational institutions, as Dave pointing out, where the US and European communities have been a little bit, on the sidelines for a while, waiting for comment and ideas to come forward, which is you actually need to take the lead. So that's my thought there, Sheila.
Awesome.
Okay.
A lot of conversation going on in our chat. Some of it is regarding to BBLOS. Joanna had asked about some resources available. Thank you, Dave. He answered that one in our chat right
Thanks,
there.
Dave.
A lot of information. Looks like making points. Sharon had talked about making points, not aware of the FRIAs being rejected. That's a sideline.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna move back onto track here with making progress with AAM and such like that.
Yeah, there we go. Again, they still need the water to grow that tree, so they need capital to make it to the finish line, which is certification for all of these. And then you still need money to manufacture, and you need the oil to make the machine starting to go. You have to sell to get money to make more, to sell more, and all that to grow. EHang, this is the main competitor out of China, is on the verge of approval from the Chinese Aviation Authority. They're going to go into tourism first. It's an autonomous vehicle that they have shown several times. They've done several demonstrations. They have a single operator for, I think, 5 or 6 of these small little 4-seaters. But they're moving forward. They have a larger regional style that is in works as well. Several are far along in their development cycles. As I mentioned, Joby and Archer are the 2 in the United States that I see are going to move first. Beta Technology is also pretty far along, though they had a shift. They went from VTOL because their transition software was not working as well as they'd like. They went and they're going CTOL first. They aren't going to change the design of their aircraft, but they're going to try to certify CTOL first and go more to the regional air mobility market. Archer is looking for 2024. I don't see them making it by 2024. They have a couple of vehicles that have been in prototype, their production model style, but I don't think they can get through all of the wickets. And again, Dave, like you say, the FAA is going to drag their feet on the final certification until they see more data, I think. Joby is in the 2025 timeframe. I think they're well positioned to go out to Osaka. They're more international, I think, than Archer, and therefore they have a better chance of moving it forward, and they have a lot more money. They have been doing very well in the stock market. They went public, as did Archer and EHang. All of those are getting public money now pretty well. The others are in the early stages still. Yeah, you have Lilium that is having problems. They went from VTOL also to primarily to CTOL to make sure they could make the ranges that they believe are best served and can give them the most returns on their investments early on in the regional air mobility market and the private jet market, actually. Eve Air Mobility down there, they are looking for a 2028 entry into the market. So they have a great, Embraer is backing them with all of their manufacturing base and engineering base. So they are taking very methodical style programmatic version of bringing their vehicle into line, but I think that they're still a major player. So that's kind of where those are. I forgot. A lot of new folks have just announced in the regional air mobility market their movement forward. Electra Air just announced their prototype was brought out. They're going to start flying here. There's let's see. I didn't mention Volocopter. As I said, they were moving forward, but Volt Aero out of Europe is moving forward with their Casio. I think it's Casio 330. The Light Aviation is up in the northwest of the United States, is making some good inroads. Eviation, which has a really sleek looking airplane, is big, I think, into the personal jet and regional air mobility market as well. All of those are hybrid propulsion, so a little bit less impact on the infrastructure that you need. You can use all of these regional airports that are out there that are underutilized. I think that they'll have a pretty quick to market path once they get certified.
Bill, we do have a couple comments into our chat
Sure.
here. Grace, who has said, "Hi, Bill," she's new to the industry, and so she had asked about, do you believe that electric drones will make any headway soon? And she had said, she's new to the industry, so she just wanted to
Sure.
that, if you could.
Yeah, again, it's a bit of what Dave and I have been talking about. There's skepticism, but I do believe that they will move into the industry. I think that there's a bunch of things that are pushing it. One, the electric battery industry is being pushed by the ground vehicle industry to some extent, not as much as you'd like. I'll talk a little bit about it at the end, but there's other ways to electrify the airplane with hydrogen fuel cells, and then you have this hybrid electric where you can generate using sustainable aviation fuel electricity through generators that are on board that then go out to these electric motors. The electric motors themselves are a lot more cost efficient than the jets or the internal combustion engine driven or the turboprop engines that are out there in aviation right now. So the price tag on flying things is going to get cheaper. The autonomy that you see that I was talking about will also help with revenue generation. And so there's a bunch of things that are pushing the greening of the needing to go green, and the Paris Accords and all those are also pushing the political favor for making these things actually happen. So I do believe they will happen. The question is when, and I'll bring that up at the end. Sure. One of the exciting things that I've seen in this industry that I hadn't really noticed is this idea of a personal air vehicle. It had always been talked about, the Jetsons and all that type of stuff. There's actually a company called Jetson that builds a flying car. And so there's a bunch of these flying cars out there that are interesting and that are actually making real movement forward. It started with Pipistrel under Textron now. They had started out as a glider that they electrified with a small electric motor. They have since done a clean sheet design, and they have what's called the Velis Electro, and it's already ready for certification. Little two-seater. They have a four-seater as well that they're working on. It's easier to get certification for these type. The Axe down there is by Skyfly out of Europe. That's a kit aircraft that they have been working on. It might be a really good trainer for this new powered lift because it actually has transitioning rotors that first hover you and then move you forward. There's Doroni has an H1 that's in prototype phase, and which I'll show you in a moment. Looks nothing like this. Here's the push from drone racing into eVTOL racing over in Europe. They had been doing drone racing for a long time, as probably David you know, but a lot of Airspeeder has what's called the Mark IV. It's a hydrogen fuel cell based system. Really interesting, cool looking. They have several of their prototypes been flying around tracks in Australia. So that would be interesting, and I think it'll capture the imagination of the public. There's a bunch of single seat out there. There's the Hexadesi that you were talking about. That's from Lyft. Opener has this back fly where you kind of lay down and then it flies forward. Xpeng, Aero, a lot of these look like flying motorcycles. The X Turismo LE, but that one out of Japan is selling for $6,800 or $680,000 for a nice, cool looking thing that can fly for about 20 minutes. Not what I would buy. And then you have the Alf Model A, prototype it. They want it to look like a cool looking airframe. And actually that thing takes off like this and then flies at you like that, where you swivel inside it. It's a crazy looking thing. And this is what, when they start showing you this is where, Dave, your skepticism is well founded. Here's what the prototype for the H1 is. Let me see if I can get this.
You muted, Bill. Hold on. Let's unmute.
So
nope,
am I muted still?
You're
Okay.
good now. Very good.
So now you can see that looks nothing like it. They have a long way to go to actually get to this bottom design, concept design. The Model A, this is what the Model A looks like. Yeah, That looks
Oh.
nothing like this car over here. So it's crazy. You have to really take this with a grain of salt. These companies have very little capital to go on. They're selling their cars now to anybody that'll buy them so that they can get the money to continue forward. I think they're going to be a bit like the Studebaker, and they'll go out of business or be swallowed up by somebody that can actually make it happen, like Textron or somebody else. I just don't think these guys are going to make it that far forward. Okay, what else do you need? You need to have infrastructure, and this is kind of critical. You have to have places to land these. There's been ideas of how do you incorporate these things called vertiports inside cities that it's going to be very expensive to buy the landscape, etc. But people are working through it and working towards it. There's vertiports operational in Singapore. Italy has a prototype vertiport, I'll call it. France has one. The Middle East is going all in. They are actually building a small little island that is based on electrified mobility, which includes vertiports that are going to be designed into it, and only electric cars and electric aircraft, that type of thing. Spain has a test space for eVTOLs. Japan is looking and building them around their Osaka Expo, so they're going all in. The US has some in some areas, down in Florida and out in Texas in particular. And in the UK, they had one called Coventry One that Skyports built, that Supernal built for their aircraft. And it was built in 11 months. Designed in 11 months, built in 11 months, and then demonstrated. They didn't actually demonstrate because they don't have a flying aircraft, but they showed how it would work. Beta has built charging stations in Ohio and has designed and picked locations up and down the eastern coast of the United States. They come in all shapes and sizes. Yeah.
So Bill, last year at Commercial UAV, I remember that someone had mentioned that LA was hoping to evolve in this direction. Is there any update on that? Is there progress? Is this near future or so far off?
Yeah, I would say that there's some amount of progress. As I heard at the conference I was talking about, the local, and I also heard this just recently at McKinsey held a webinar on vertiports, that it's the local representatives that are going to be the biggest impediment. They think that the FAA is going to be pretty clear. They have, as I point out there, they have put out design standards and guidelines that are pretty clear. So those are out there already. However, you have to worry about what are the noise standards, and what are the the different patterns that the local governments are going to push. So for LA, I think the LA Olympics are going to help give them a focus point and something that they are going to work on there. I think that they'll go probably to very precise, specific locations that are not city center, that are outside city center, that'll be used to transport primarily to the airport. And they'll build their first vertiport, true vertiport, at the airport using existing aviation focused footprint. So that's where I think it's going, Desi. There is actually Long Beach has been standing up and been working with the public and trying to come up with their plans for UAM for quite a while now. I haven't seen much discussion on it lately, but I think that it just takes a long time to build consensus of such a large area like that.
Wow, what an exciting time to be in this industry. So
it
much
is
potential.
Yep.
Very exciting.
Okay, so this one's next one. So this was one of the biggest concerns outside of the government that Dave and I were talking about, that will remain probably the largest for a while, but there is a huge issue with pilots. And so to the discussion that we had on who's going to be the pilots for these things, well, they still need pilots for regular aircraft too. McKinsey has said that they believe there'll be a need of 590,000 total, whereas I think right now they are at about 200,000, and this will be in the 2030 timeframe. And UAM alone will need 60,000 pilots. So how are you going to do that? There's all sorts of different regimes being talked about, but are being stymied by the FAA. Things like using virtual reality and simulation to cut down on the number of hours you need to actually get your pilot certification. Even though they're very realistic, they give you a lot of experience on procedural knowledge, and a lot of the OEMs are building simulators that have a digital twin, I'll call it, that allows you to know and feel the transition points for all these very unique characteristics. That unfortunately is not being viewed as something moving forward with the FAA and with with many of the pilot associations too. They feel that it's just not the right thing to do at this time. I think automation is the best answer, but it's going to be a hard pill to swallow until people actually see it. And hence the drone industry is going to be big in proving to people that you can fly things around safely and let automation take it and take the human out of the loop to be much more safe than, and this was brought up and has been brought up a lot of times. Not only do you need pilots, but you also need technical skills for manufacturing and flying and keeping up these vehicles. I think that that there may be some relief. As you see, there's been a huge layoff after the big plus up of technology sector like Google and Amazon and Salesforce and others. They had a big layoff just earlier this year as the economy kind of leveled out. And there's all these very technical people out there now, a huge workforce that could be converted into this, I think, into this aviation sector that is very technically oriented. The drone industry might be the hero here. Again, if it goes to automation and you're a drone pilot and you've already been flying automated vehicles around for a long time, that might be where we could pick up a lot of workforce, I think, in this area.
Fantastic. Yes.
So the rest of it, I'm going to finish up with, there's leads and routes. I couldn't get to everything today, and I apologize. It is such a broad discussion that I wanted to focus it down and get finished in less than 45 minutes, and I blew that. I apologize, Desi. So there's things about the power source. Everybody started out with batteries. Lithium-ion batteries were coming on strong. I talked about the Teslas were making big progress and all that. Well, unfortunately, the big leaps in power density that was expected with new chemical properties, et cetera, in batteries, going to solid state batteries, all of that was, Lilium's a prime example. They had put out that they were going to have batteries that would be up in the 400 kilowatts per kilogram or watts per kilogram, and that just has not come out. So they had to throttle back the expectations. They're not going to be vertical for any time soon. They're going to build the airplane so they can be, but they're primarily going to get the range because they're going to take off conventionally and they're going to fly conventionally and land conventionally. That gives them a lot more excess power in the end because you use a lot of power when you go vertical before you start horizontal. Hydrogen fuel cells and direct burn of hydrogen are coming on strong. Hydrogen has a huge, is even better than gasoline with its energy density. It's just that it burns so much hotter in engines that it would melt or really, degrade the capabilities of the engines until you start looking at the engines. Airbus is looking at direct burn fuels for commercial aviation, but they're looking for it way out in the future, 2035 and beyond. Hydrogen fuel cells, however, are being used now and being demonstrated now by ZeroAvia and by Hydroplane. Luis Sengupta, who won Hall of Fame as the CEO of Hydroplane, just got a Cal State grant to demonstrate hydrogen fuel cell propulsion in a small aircraft. Communications and networks, there's a lot that has to be done there. you have to be able to connect across this network to really make it worthwhile for, particularly for UAM. Honeywell is doing a lot. They just announced something called VersaWave that incorporates SATCOMs and 5Gs in a very small, very lightweight package that would be good for this industry. 5G can really has the bandwidth and the ability to move data around very quickly. FAA is still working on its next generation for BVLOS support. That's, you know, slow, as Dave knows, but it is moving forward, and they do have a plan, if nothing else. The use space and the use of incorporation of unmanned into the national airspace through some means of traffic management, that is getting some interest and some work done. OneSky announced just recently that they had partnered with Echodyne to put a very small radar on UAVs to allow for sense and avoid, and FAA has brought out the concept of Ops for 2.0 that shows the sort of the traffic patterns and their ideas of the march towards true integration of UAS and UAM into the national airspace. So that's heartening. They have a plan again that they didn't have just a year ago. And finally, autonomy. There's people out there that are actually working on the autonomy concepts that have been out there. Merlin is one of those. Wisk, which was just bought by Boeing, had been working out of New Zealand for a long time on autonomous operations. So I'm hopeful that they will start to show that. And New Zealand's not a bad place to do that. Less risk of, you know, population densities out there. They might kill some sheep if they land on something, but people less so. So I'm going to finish up with what it's going to look like. I'll go through this very quickly. This is my prognostication. It started in 2010, right? First eVTOLs were in design. 2016, we saw Uber's white paper that talked about UAM. I think 2022, we've seen the vehicles continue their development. 2024 to 26 will be the demonstration phase that I talked about. I think there'll be a lot of mergers and acquisitions. You're going to see the industry consolidate some. You're seeing some of that. Boeing brought in Wisk. I think more of that will happen. And you'll start seeing some regional air mobility certification happen quickly. I think regional air mobility industry will start to take off up to about 2030. And you'll see the pilot programs for UAM be instituted across the globe, wherever they are, but they'll be very localized. And then in 2030 to 2035 and beyond, I think the regional air mobility, there's a huge desire for that out there, will be established. I think UAM will be spotty, but building up in places like Asia and South America, where, you know, you have a huge UAM population already. And then you'll have the commercial air mobility technology development will start to pick up. Even Embraer is looking at that. So I think there's a chance that could come on. And finally, here's some references that I put out there. The concept of operations on the web. The Helicopter Association International has a great read that gives a lot of the insights into what this new industry will need, and it's really a fascinating read. I'd suggest that came out in February. McKinsey's Flying Cab Drivers Wanted. This goes into, you know, what's going on and how you're going to find the people to fly these things. And then Airbus, for the UTM problem, Airbus and Boeing with the ICAO put out this blueprint for air traffic management and how it should happen in the future, what the industry is talking about, what it thinks they need. So that's it. This is my sorry, I really pushed the envelope there, Desi. I apologize.
So actually, can you back that up one
Sure.
slide? That was going to be one of my questions. If someone wanted to find out more about it, how would they go about that? Where could they find that information? So I appreciate that you put that on there. So if someone wanted to take a snapshot, and then of course your information, which was on the second slide up, would like to have that as well if someone wanted to reach out to you.
Sure.
Great information. I realize we're at the top of the hour, and so if somebody needed to jump off, that's great. I'm really thinking I might want to loop Dave Messina back into a coffee connection to share
Yeah.
more. This conversation that we've had going back and forth is just so relevant to the needs, seeing the future and the direction we're going, and seeing the hurdles that we're having to overcome. It's just so imperative that we work through these details. And so I know we're out of time, but my ask is going to be actually to Bill and to Dave at this point. Is there something we can do? Is there, I realize it's a small community, but we have a voice. And is there something that we can do to push things forward, or share our opinion, or just help in some way?
I would say that the Helicopter Association International, any of the associations, USVI, Women in Drones, all of them have ways to integrate or to talk to Congress, which is a big deal. Congress is, again, going after the FAA Authorization Act. As Dave said, there's 1,200 pages of material that has to be reviewed and gone through and maybe amended. Those that are impacting this, that's where your voice comes through loudest. I would say the other one is the FAA has put out things for comment, public comment. You can actually do that as a private individual. I can, this just recently, there was this FAA call RFI that came out, and I can try to find that as well and put that in there. So
Yeah,
those are some of the ideas.
While you're
What
looking
would you
for that,
say?
we've as you say, the FAA Reauthorization Act, both out of the House and Senate, is now draft legislation. It's going into committee, and it's a bicameral and bipartisan bill. So we have two bills that'll have to go to conference to be rationalized. So there is a little bit of time, and we are woefully disappointed in the result. We asked for one thing, and there's no evidence of that being there. So watch the various associations, ours included, FPV Freedom Coalition, and we will be asking people to send memos to Congress again. So this, and in particular, the check if your congressional representative or senator is a member of each of the respective subcommittees on aviation. So we are in touch with those groups with respect to the what can be done with the FAA. Keep pushing your AAAC reps. We're also on drone safety team. And that's not been a tremendous help, but giving Jeffrey Vincent a hard time every time you see him would be a good start. He's new in the job. He is much more open-minded than his predecessor, Jay Merkel. So we're hopeful about that. Jay's comment was recreational regulations are done. We have nothing more to do with them. So, we're trying, I think Jeffrey's a lot more open-minded. We're thrilled about that. And so we're working with Jeffrey as Jeffrey's direct reports right now, and hope to be working with Jeffrey soon. So send cards and letters to Congress right away over the next month. The schedule is that the FAA Reauthorization Act is supposed to be rationalized and voted on by September. So end of June, the House wants to have their version done. So I think the opportunity for any change is in conference, when the two chambers get together and have to alter their respective bills. One is 700, one is 400 pages. So they're going to make some changes.
Awesome. Well, I will do some research on my end, try to find all that information and put that into our members perk page, make things a little bit easier for you and opportunities.
Yeah,
Meanwhile, Bill,
I've got drafts, Desi. Let me know. I can help.
all right, perfect. You said it, and I will. I'll be reaching out then. So, and then Bill has also put several links into our chat. Thank you Thank you, Bill. So we can also share that. And it's all just building a brighter future for aviation. And so love the community. Thank you so much, Bill, for sharing today and expanding on what we know is our future. I just love this. And so we did take you up to 10 o'clock today. We have some amazing guest speakers coming up. Super excited. We have Queen coming. I have someone that I'm lining up for helping us with Canva. So we'll be able to learn about some social media. That will be great, right? All kinds of great stuff. So it was super good to see you. Thank you again, Bill. Thank you, Dave, for sharing as well. Love
Absolutely.
the
Nice job,
insight.
Bill. Thank you.
All right. And we will see everybody next week. That kind of wraps it up.